Hey kiddies, it's Triple Feature Tuesday once again, and we start off October 2016 with Maryland mockumentary horror movies.
Halloween, this is Halloween, this is Halloween.
That's right, October's here, and you know what that means. Nothing but horror movies. Horror movies, and more horror movies, and okay, a little bit of Luke Cage, it's really good. But mainly horror movies, and so I thought let's start out with something big and fun and local, because I'm in Baltimore, Maryland, and as it turns out, there are at least 3 horror movies that are of the found footage variety that present as documentaries, all set in my beloved state of Maryland. So, our menu is going to include The Blair Witch Project, Behind the Mask, The Rise of Leslie Vernon, and The Bay. I'm not gonna lie, when I first saw The Blair Witch Project in the theater when it came out back in 1999, I was very, very pumped because, I mean, it just sounded so fascinating. Like, was it a movie? Was it a documentary? What the hell happened to these kids going out into the woods? Nobody knew. Fanning the Flames was this really great special on the Sci-Fi Channel that just made it even scarier. And so you have to understand, when I saw it, I was really disappointed because it's really excruciatingly boring. It's basically just watching 3 people you don't like going on a vacation and having a very miserable time. With a witch, maybe? That's part of the problem, is like there's no there. It always reminds me of that great bit in one of the Simpsons Treehouse of Horror when Lisa is reading Edgar Allan Poe's The Raven. It gets to the point where the narrator of the poem opens the door and there's nothing there, even despite all the knocking. And Bart interjects, "Hey Lisa, you know what would have been scarier than nothing? Anything." So the movie is about Heather, Mike, and Josh, and Heather is making a documentary about the Blair Witch in the woods in Burkittsville, Maryland. And she has dragooned 2 guys to help her out with cameras and lugging equipment around. And the goal is to get some interviews and footage around Burkittsville, and then to go into the woods of Burkittsville and find, the House of Legend. And, they eventually do find the house, maybe, or the house finds them. They end up lost in the woods, which may have been Heather's fault with the map, or may have been the workings of the witch. Much like everything else in this movie, you just don't know. You don't know what is going on because there's not really a script, there's not really a plot. Everything was improvised and ad-libbed, and it's just kind of a thing that happened. I had wondered if I would soften on it because I saw it in the theater and I've never seen it since. And so watching it again for this triple feature, I was surprised at how much worse it is when there's no suspense whatsoever. When you know how the movie ends, it's even worse. So, wow. These people are really, really annoying, and they're really, really screaming all of the time, like, about everything. And when they're not screaming, they're just being snippy and assholes. So this is not something I want to watch ever again. It's just so dull. But we can't discount it. It is an incredibly important movie, if only for bringing back the idea of the faux documentary, the mockumentary, as Rob Reiner coined the term in This Is Spinal Tap. Making it a viable thing again. Like, there was This Is Spinal Tap, and then I can't think of anything else where it was, a fictional documentary. And then later Christopher Guest would, basically start doing This Is Spinal Tap, but with his own crew of people. But I gotta believe that part of that is because it was very successful with the Blair Witch Project. If you don't want to go the comedy route, just in horror movies, all the paranormal activities, the grave encounters, all the Cloverfield, Chernobyl Diaries, all of these movies would not have happened if Blair Witch wasn't an incredible success, which it was an incredible success. It couldn't not have been a success. They made the movie for something like $60,000. There's no way the movie couldn't have made money if they just sold it a little bit. How much the movie actually made in the theater, the first run? $246 million. I can't even imagine what kind of a percentage rate that is between investment and outcome. And the reason why is because the other big crucial thing that the Blair Witch Project, if not created, perfected: viral marketing. there were missing posters. People were finding the tape of the Blair Witch Project in places and talking to their friends and building it up before commercials or previews even started happening for the movie. So, viral marketing, which is now everywhere, and the found footage, Blair Witch Project cannot be ignored, despite the fact that it is just terrible. It is just not interesting at all and not scary. I mean, it's scary the first time because you don't know until, you find out that no, there's just nothing there. And I apologize for spoilers, but it's 16 years old. You should have seen it by now. Next up, we have Behind the Mask, The Rise of Leslie Vernon, a mockumentary about a slasher. Leslie Vernon is an up-and-coming slasher, a la Freddy Krueger or Jason Voorhees, Chucky or Michael Myers, and as evidenced by them referencing these famous horror movie icons over and over and over again. He has allowed Taylor Gentry, a journalism major, along with her film crew, to follow him as he prepares for his first event where he will torture and kill a whole group of teenagers. And I gotta tell you, if you're a horror fan, you need to see this movie. It is so clever and fun and funny in terms of deconstructing what it is to be a slasher movie and what it would go into becoming these people if, you don't believe in the actual supernatural. That's what's great, is they go into how slashers appear to be supernatural. There's a really wonderful bit. It's stupid because they cut it out of the movie, but you can still see it on a deleted scene. The scene opens up with we see Leslie's training regimen, and he talks about all the cardio that he has to do because he has to, because all the teenagers are, quote, running around like gazelles, and I have to keep walking. And then they demonstrate how, you do the slasher walk while everybody else runs, and the trick is, like, you run when they're not looking, and then you just appear to be walking, like, slowly and methodically. And it's stuff like that. It's so good. They talk about, like, planting things, inventing connections between people that don't exist for the purpose of making a greater story, because that's what this is supposed to be. One of the fascinating things is that from the slasher's perspective, it's not about murdering people. The death of teenagers is a byproduct of what they're trying to do, which is create triumphs of good over evil. Ideally, they want the good people to beat them, and so, let them escape so they can come back and do it again. Really charming, despite the fact that they're torturing and murdering teenagers all throughout the movie. These journalist kids are basically aiding and abetting them the whole time. It's really, really sketchy morally and ethically, which they don't shy away from at all. It's just, this is a really, really good movie that nobody ever talks about. It is set in the actual town of Glen Echo, Maryland, but it was not filmed in Maryland. I believe it was filmed in Oregon. Unfortunately, Blair Witch Project is the only movie that was actually filmed in Maryland, despite all of them being set in Maryland, which you would think would change more now, since we've got so many other things filming here, like House of Cards and Peep. The whole movie is tied together with the performances of the two leads. They're really, really great. Leslie Vernon, played by Nathan Basil, and Taylor Gentry, played by Angela Girdles. She's famous for being in Home Alone the first. She's the one that tells Kevin that he is what the French call les incompetents. It's very, very clever. They're like the first 2/3 of the movie are presented as this mockumentary, and then this is the only movie that actually breaks the mockumentary idea, and that the cameras go off but the story keeps going. But if you are paying attention, they've been breaking from the actual mockumentary in little bits throughout the whole movie. But really, really great. If you like 80s slasher movies, you need to watch this. There's so many good references. You'll see like the Nightmare on Elm Street kids. You'll see stuff from Halloween. There's a shot of Kane Hodder living in the Elm Street house. It's really, really good, and it's really, really fun. And I wish they could ever get the money to make another one, but it's probably just never going to happen, despite me buying the action figure for their Kickstarter and everything. But I'm not bitter, because we have the one movie, and it's so good. I don't want to tell you anymore, because it's just really, really great, and you should go watch it. Finally, we have The Bay. Co-written and directed by Barry Levinson, Mr. Baltimore, which makes the fact that he didn't film it in Maryland all the more hurtful. It was actually filmed in North and South Carolina, which just feels like a betrayal. This initially started out as just a straight-up legit documentary about all the pollution happening in the Chesapeake Bay on the eastern shore, but Levinson realized that, you know, if I make a documentary about the pollution on the eastern shore of Maryland, nobody's going to pay attention to it. But if I hide scientific facts and statistics about the pollution of the Chesapeake Bay in a really, really gross horror movie, well, people might notice that finally and maybe do something about it. So enter Claridge, Maryland, which, you know, sounds a lot like Cambridge, Maryland, which is a city on the eastern shore of Maryland, which is just a shithole. Then in Maryland, we have the Tyson poultry plants, which are not named Tyson in the movie. They're just, you know, the unnamed poultry plants that are perpetually shoving all of their waste into the Chesapeake Bay with, you know, no real effort to clean it up before it gets in there. So as a result, we have all these steroids going into the chicken shit, which is going into the bay. Add to that some nondescript radioactive event that happened a couple years ago. Mix those together with things called isopods, which are also commonly known as underwater cockroaches, and you have a recipe for disaster. The movie is presented as an interview with another journalism major. A lot of journalism majors and film majors in these movies, and it's actually kind of fun, or one of the recurring motifs in all of these movies is you get to see nominal main character presenting the like formal documentary, I'm a journalist delivery to everything, and then immediately cut to just them saying, was that stupid or stilted? And yes, it was. So this movie takes place a couple years after the events of all of the footage, which they do a great job of sticking straight to. It is found footage, it is security cameras, it is stuff that was posted on the web, it is home video footage, and they have explanations for how they got everything. It's an interview with the journalism major that just happened to be in Claridge, Maryland, covering the 4th of July of 2009. And that's when the shit hit the fan, or the bugs hit the water. Because everybody is drinking the water. That's the scariest part of this movie for me. Not just because this could theoretically be connected to my drinking water, but just because it's, you know, it's in the water. We take our water for granted so much, and it could be much more polluted than anybody is telling us, and we wouldn't know until after we've been drinking it for months and months and months. But everything happens very quickly in this movie, which is nice, because it's just, I was kind of impressed, because, I mean, other than Sphere, I don't really know that Barry Levinson's really ever directed a horror movie, and he's got a very good sense of timing, like, you know, building up the suspense and then delivering something really gross and disgusting, like, pretty much rhythmically. It reminded me a lot of the pacing of The Thing. John Carpenter's The Thing, actually, in terms of just lulling you into, like, calm, but letting you know something's about to happen, and then zang. All the people are drinking the water, and then all the people start breaking out in these hideous, blistery, burning rashes, and then they start getting stomach aches. Well, as it turns out, the burning, blistery rashes are sort of a side effect of the isopod infestation, because remember the radiation? Yeah, that's just radiation poisoning. That's all, like, they're burning from the inside. But the isopods are also growing from the inside, and then they start erupting from the inside out, and they're these, like, they're a bit bigger than my thumb, and they're eating their way out of you, and there are hundreds of them in you, and there's nothing, literally nothing you can do once you've drunk a little bit of this water, because they're all larvae, and they're small, and they're everywhere, and the movie's so gross. So you should watch it. It's really, really a lot of fun. Not a lot of famous faces in this one at all, but it does feature Kristen Connolly. She was the nice virgin-esque girl from Cabin in the Woods, so that was kind of fun to see her in a different role in a different horror movie. But man, it's going to be a good October. Maryland mockumentary horror movies, Blair Witch Project, Behind the Mask, The Rise of Leslie Vernon, and The Bay. Hey, they all start with B, so that just makes them even better. Maryland mockumentary horror movies that start with B. God damn it, I love it! So specific, so absurd, so terrible. Join me next week for more horror movies. Oh, God, I love October.